Hi all, in this lab let us understand how to deploy a mock API. Okay, so that means we are using a mock integration. So during the development stage, when the backend is not really developed and if you want to test something, you can always use a mock integration to test the API functionality. Okay, so let's get started. How does it look like? So we have AWS Cloud and we have API Gateway Regional Endpoint, and this is a REST API example for mock API. Now we have one resource called slash pets and it is calling mock integration. So when we say mock integration, there is no real backend. The API gateway itself is implementing this functionality. Now when the client sends the request, now in this example, the scope parameter can be internal or public. So based upon the type of the value, the value of this variable, the response will be different. Okay. Now the mock integration will respond to the 200 or 500 HTTP response code back to the clients with a different message. For 200 response, there is one message. For 500 response, there is another message. So this is how we are going to test end to end between the clients and the mock integration. Now let's go to the source code. In this lab, let us implement the mock integration for the API gateway. Okay, so let's get started. So if I go to the API gateway.tf file, so we are creating one mock API of type REST API and the edge type, the endpoint type is regional. Okay. Now the definition of the API is coming from OpenAPI. Okay, so OpenAPI is an industry standard specification for creating the REST APIs. So here we are using the YAML file definition. So let's go to the file and here we are defining one resource called slash pets and the method called get and few parameters which is scope, um, name of the parameter and it's a query string and it is of type string and based upon the type of the based on the value of this query scope input, the response will vary. Okay, so in the responses we have two responses, 500 and 200. Okay, so that means the method response is configured with both 500 and 200, and when the 200 response is sent back to the clients, we are sending with one application slash JSON schema, and the schema is empty, which is configured it below. Okay, so empty schema is configured there. Then the X Amazon API gateway integration is the type which basically configures the integration response. So in the response, the default is 200, and we are sending the status code and also a message. So for any 5xx responses, for example, 500, 501, 502, for all of these responses, the status code will be 500 and the response will be a different message. So here the type of the integration is mark. Okay. Now let us implement this and deploy this using the Terraform. So I've already run Terraform init, plan and apply. Now let's go to console and see how this looks like. Okay. So this is the API. So the name of the API is mock API. It's a REST protocol and endpoint type is regional. There is one resource called slash pets and within that one method called get. Okay. In the method request, there is no authorization, no request validator, no API keys, the default configuration. Integration request is type mock as you see here, and the template, the mapping templates. So you see if there is a value of internal for scope, the returning code will be 200, otherwise it will be 500. The integration response, the default response is 200, and for this there is a mapping template, so which basically provides the response body. Okay, status code 200, messages go ahead without me, for example. For any 5xx response, the response body looks like this. Okay, now the method response, there are two responses, 200 and 500. Okay, and the response body here we are using model empty. Okay, now let us go ahead and test it here. So if I go here and provide the scope is equal to internal, so here the response is 200. If the scope is public, so the response is 500. Okay. Similarly, we can test it using the curl. If it is internal is equal to 200, if it is public is equal to 500. Okay. So with this, we have demoed the mock integration for API gateway.